I'm sure the president will try to bully and threaten some members to voting for the Senate passed package. But those threats tend to work better with Republican members in very safe seats. I expect those folks in the safe seats who are making some noise right now will melt under the pressure from the president. The bigger question is the Medicaid changes that are of concern to many of the more swing district or more moderate members. Their problem is not going to be a Republican primary. Their problem is going to be potentially losing to Democrats in the fall. And so those are the folks I think they ought to pay close attention to. These Medicaid changes that the Senate went further than the House did on the Medicaid changes, and many House Republicans drew a pretty clear line in the sand on that issue. So I'm anxious to see how they navigate Medicaid. I could see this bill being changed once again and going back to the Senate. You certainly have fiscal hawks on the right who are screaming about this, but again, they're more likely to be pressured by the president successfully. But it's these more moderate members. Don Bacon, he could be a no vote. He's not running again. Tom Massey is an immovable object. He won't move. And I don't think the Republicans can lose more than, I think they could lose maybe one more vote, and that's it. And so I'm anxious to see how they do this whip operation.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you speak about this, Congressman, and welcome back. You seized immediately on the issue of Medicaid. Donald Trump knows what an issue this is. He talked about it on his way to the Alligator Alcatraz Detention Center in Florida earlier today. Listen to how Donald Trump put it.
I think so. I think it's going to be the greatest bill ever passed. No, we're not going to be playing with Medicaid.
Only waste, fraud, and abuse. Americans could lose their
the Democrats have it wrong.
Promise?
Yeah. Waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, if you look at what's gone on, we've gone way back. We take care of Medicaid. We take care of Medicare. They will blow Medicare and Medicaid because they have no idea what they're doing. Just like they don't have any idea what they did on the border. They have no idea. Medicaid is in big trouble with the Democrats.
Charlie Dent, you hear the Republican talking points on this, beginning with the president. Waste, fraud, abuse. No one's losing their coverage is what we've been hearing unless they deserve to, unless they're an able-bodied adult who should be at work. Are the American people buying that argument?
Well, the problem for the president is that the Congressional Budget Office came out with a report saying that somewhere between 8 to 14 million people, or 12 million people, could be losing coverage as a result to changes in Medicaid. And so that's a major problem. You can just say, hey, it's all about waste, fraud, and abuse, but we're talking about people who are going to be uncovered because of the work requirements, and also because I think the Senate, I'm not sure exactly where the Senate fell down on the so-called provider taxes that states use to draw down federal Medicaid dollars. But that's another issue. I mean, so the president doesn't ever get into the policy details. I had a big fight with him back in 2017 over this in the White House over, at that time, proposed changes to Medicaid. And then we were talking block grants. I told him it wasn't going to work, and he got pretty upset with me because I didn't vote for the bill. But I said that was going to cut over 20 million people from their health benefits at that time from Medicaid. So that's the challenge that the president has. He can talk all he wants, but as long as the reports out there saying over 8 million people are going to lose health benefits, they need a better argument.
Well, yeah, which gets us to the polling around this bill, which suggests that widely, no matter what poll you look at, it is more unpopular than it is popular. If the House ultimately is going to pass this and do so by July 4th, have the president sign it into law, knowing there will be roughly, 16 months until the midterms in 2026, how would the party need to course correct to change that?
Well, the party's done something here that I think I think this has been a miscalculation to put this all in one big, beautiful bill. I think that was always a mistake. The Senate always wanted to break this in two. You may recall in 2017, after the Obamacare repeal replace initiative failed, with John McCain going like that, turning his thumb down, then Republicans moved on to tax reform, or the tax changes, and they weren't dealing with spending cuts, just tax policy. Now that bill, was enacted into law. I supported it, but it really didn't help Republicans much in the midterm election. This bill is different because you are combining both what I could say are probably unpopular cuts to Medicaid and to food stamps or SNAP benefits and some other areas. And you're also extending those tax changes that largely benefit people on the higher income scale. And so that's the toxic political mix that Republicans are confronting right now. So I suspect between now and the midterm, Republicans will be playing a lot of defense. You may remember in the 2018 midterms, Democrats used the health care issue as a blunt instrument against Republicans in those races. I suspect Democrats will try to use health care and Medicaid in particular as an instrument against Republicans in marginal swing districts going forward.
Well, so where are you on the next 24 hours here, Congressman? You seem to think that the House needs to make changes. It goes back to the Senate. That means we miss the 4th of July deadline. Does Tom Emmer not have the votes as he sends out the notice for lawmakers to report?
Well, I bet today he does not have the votes. That does not mean he will not have the votes by July 4th. But there are, look, I think there are over a dozen members, House members, who've expressed some pretty strong opposition to this bill. As I said previously, I suspect those on the far right who are concerned about deficits, they will melt under pressure from the president. We've heard this before. They'll yell, they'll scream, they'll bang the shoe on the table. But when the president says, support this, or I'm going to fund the primary opponent against you, they tend to fall in line. The problem will be for these members in these swing districts, these members who are at great risk of losing their seats to the Democrats. Look, they can either displease the MAGA base, they can displease their constituents writ large. If Trump is mad at them and funds a primary and Trump's successful, gets a more very conservative person to replace that individual, that seat will probably be gone in November anyway. So that's the calculation here. If I were the president and running my whip operation, I'd try to figure out a way to communicate to those people and listen to them. Because, by the way, if the House flips, Donald Trump is going to have a really rough time in his next 2 years in office. You're going to see all kinds of oversight and hearings and people being subpoenaed. So Donald Trump better be very careful how he handles those members. Threats and intimidation tactics are not the way to handle them at this moment.
Well, and Congressman, if you were sitting in one of those swing states right now, knowing Elon Musk is threatening to fund himself primary challenges to those who vote yes for this bill, which he does not like, would that make you second guess your ultimate vote?
Well, maybe some on the hard right will, but at the end of the day, I think Donald Trump has a lot more influence with Republican primary voters than does Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk obviously has a checkbook. But at the end, Donald Trump is able to rally much of the base to support his chosen candidates. So the Musk threat is real. I suspect Musk could help a Tom Massey, who will likely vote no. And there might be some other Republicans who vote now, who are now on the hard right, who could probably give Elon a call and say, I'm going to need your help, my friend. But right now, I'd say that Trump has more sway than Musk. But if I'm going to vote no and I'm in a very conservative district, I think that Elon Musk might be running to their rescue and might be able to maybe save them.